Well, hello there. I'm sorry to be a few minutes late, but here I am, Chuck of Chuck's Captivating Chat here on Monday, June 10th, 2025, for another installment. I am doing just fine here in Los Angeles. A lot of my friends have been concerned for me, but typically when we have one of our catastrophes, the news media tends to play up the drama of it, build it up to be a lot bigger than it actually is. Not to downplay what is happening right now in downtown Los Angeles, it's tragic. Um, but I personally am safe in my neighborhood here in the Los Feliz area of Los Angeles. Um, Very peaceful here, but I've been getting phone calls from people around the country. Friends, Chuck, we're worried about you. Are you okay? You didn't mark yourself safe on Facebook, that type of thing. And it's like when we had our fires in January, when we have one of our earthquakes or tremors, we have one of our torrential storms with mudslides. There's so much drama. Hi, Joyce. Thanks for joining. There's so much drama in Los Angeles. It's a drama queen city. I think it's just all of the collective consciousness here, the energy. Maybe it's all the actors, the artists, the writers, the musicians, the dancers. It's an eclectic city. It's a city filled with temperament and talent. And I wonder if sometimes that manifests outwardly into some of the events we have here. I'm remembering. Oh, hi, Andy. Thanks for joining. Um, I'm remembering, it was a number of years ago, there was an earthquake in San Francisco, and the news media played it up like the whole city had collapsed. It was in flames, like it was 1906 all over again. And I traveled up there about 3 weeks later, and the city look who just joined us, Miss Sasha. The city looked the same. You would never know an earthquake had ever happened. Then I found out that all of the chaos was like around the Fisherman's Wharf area. It was like a 2 block area where there were some fires and damage. Well, that's what the news media focused on. And so that was covered all over the world, implying that all of San Francisco was up in flames. Similarly, when we had fires a number of years ago here in Los Angeles, it wasn't so bad. I just realized as I was saying that, well, we did actually have fires that bad in January, but a lot of the city was on fire, like the Pacific Palisades. The embers were traveling in directions like Hollywood, certainly into the Valley, Encino. Um, Here in Los Feliz, it was a little touch and go. We didn't know. There were several times we had evacuation warnings on our phones. Uh, my electricity was out for 3 days. It was kind of funny because, my partner, Dr. Whimsy Anderson, that I work with on Tuesdays, um, she called me up on a Thursday and said, Chuck, I need you to do a quick live stream with me. People want you to talk about the fires and what's going on. And I was like, Whimsy, my electricity is out. I have no Wi-Fi. And I just got an evacuation warning on my phone. I've got to pack a bag and try to get my cat stuff together and get out the door. Let me check some comments here. Yeah, Joyce, it is hard not to talk current events tonight, especially since I'm not so sure about tomorrow with Whimsy's show. That's the show where we get into current events big time. And we had a very sweet talk today. She's leaving for Mexico for the week, but she's going to still work while she's there from her hotel room. That's the magic of technology and phone lines and so forth. So we were still going to do Taco Tuesday tentatively tomorrow, but because of her traveling, we may have to put it on hold. We'll wait and see. But certainly there will be plenty to talk about. And I know if we are doing a show tomorrow, I better just bone up on my news events, because I'm embarrassed to say a lot of this weekend I was heavily immersed in some of my personal art projects. and I didn't have my TV on, and I was sort of taking a little break from the news. In the meantime, all hell is breaking loose in downtown LA, and I didn't know about it until late in the day on Saturday. So I'm a little embarrassed by that. For me, someone who's supposed to be keeping up with the news when I do the show with her. Let's see here. What was this? It's turning on friends of his like is talking to you on Facebook. Hey, just hugs. Oh, I see. There's some personal conversation here amongst the two of you. I don't know if that was meant for me. Oh yeah, Joyce. Yeah, Trump's sending the Marines to LA. That is creating a hotbed of controversy right now. I was watching the news this morning. Sorry, Sasha. She wants to be on camera. Okay. Okay, Sasha. I'm indulging her so I can get her to calm down so she won't jump on my keyboard or knock my lights over, which she has done. Haven't you? But anyway, I was watching the local news this morning, and Mayor Karen Bass and Governor Gavin Newsom are both extremely upset over what Trump is doing because they feel he's pouring more kerosene on the fire. Both the mayor and the governor were insistent that they have the situation under control, and this is only going to make matters far more complicated and potentially more violent. And I know that Governor Newsom is going to sue over this, feeling that Trump has overstepped his constitutional rights. But anyway, we'll see how that plays out. You were watching the movie Sister Act and didn't know all this time there was an actress by the name of Mary Wicks in it. Yes, Mary Wicks was in that. She played nuns several times. In fact, she once did an episode. She and Lucille Ball were extremely close, professionally and personally. And Mary Wicks guest starred on an episode of Here's Lucy, which was Lucy's third series, the series she did from 1968 to 74. And Gail Gordon played Lucy's brother-in-law, Harry. So Harry had a sister who was a sister, a nun, and it was Mary Wicks. And Lucy used to joke about from that point on, they always called her Sister Wicks. Yeah. Oh, and to give Sasha a hug. Oh, I just did. Yeah, Joyce, he's wanted to impose martial law since his first term because, frankly, he's trying to be a dictator. And this is all part of a plan. Many feel he's doing this to create massive distraction, but it's also to send a message to other protesters in other cities because there are similar protests scheduled to take place. I was just talking to one of Dr. Whimsy's clients on the phone who lives in Chicago, and she said they have protests scheduled, and that's our First Amendment right, the right to protest. And I was watching The View today, people talking about it, about how this feels like it's something being done to mute people's right to free speech, put people in line through violence. But anyway, let me see what else do I have here. Another thing I don't know, Elizabeth Montgomery. Oh yeah, Elizabeth Montgomery was Robert Montgomery's daughter. In fact, I had a friend who had a memorabilia store on Melrose here in Los Angeles, across from the Pacific Design Center, if any of you know that area. Beautiful memorabilia store. He had wonderful autographed pieces and props, and I was just in heaven when I would go in there and spend time with him in the store. Al Morley was a dear, dear friend. But he said one day Elizabeth Montgomery came in, and she was just going through some little notebooks and things and found pictures of her father, Robert Montgomery. And she just said to him, "Oh, you have my father here. How wonderful." He's very sweet. But I saw on, it was I don't know if that show is still on the A&E network, called Biography. I used to love it when it was on, and I think a lot of those are on YouTube now. I don't know if they're still producing new episodes, but they did Elizabeth Montgomery. I think that was one of their 2-hour biographies. It was very well done. And they said that Robert Montgomery was very jealous of his daughter's success. This was he was past his prime in the 1960s. His own illustrious career had kind of, shall we say, twilight had fallen on his day. And Elizabeth Montgomery was the one who was now white hot in her career. So he was very jealous of that. And it's my understanding they wanted Robert Montgomery to play Samantha's father, Maurice. The one who was, of course, the great actor Maurice Evans played on the show, along with Agnes Moorehead. It's the bickering couple. But I mean, I just thought, what a lost opportunity that was. And how sweet that would have been to have had Robert Montgomery playing Maurice, very theatrical Maurice, I'm sure, with the cape and the top hat and everything. And see father and daughter working together, but it didn't happen. And I understand it was because of his petty jealousy. And also, I'll tell you another thing about Robert Montgomery. We're on there. I was very good friends with the actress Evelyn Keyes, who was, she was never a superstar, but she was a reasonably big star during the 1940s. And one of her most important films she ever did was a film called Here Comes Mr. Jordan. And her co-star was Robert Montgomery. Now, what's interesting about Here Comes Mr. Jordan, if you're familiar with Warren Beatty's film Heaven Can Wait, made in 1978, that was a remake of Here Comes Mr. Jordan. And, because I always loved to just chat with Evelyn about her movies. And one night I rented that movie purposely just because I wanted to see one of her greater films and be able to talk with her about it. And I thought she and Robert Montgomery worked very well together. And she said he was a cold fish to act with. She said we had no chemistry together. I said, but Evelyn, it looked like you had wonderful chemistry. And she said, Chuck, it's because I was a good actress. I pretended like there was good chemistry between us. So that's about all I have on Robert Montgomery right now. But yeah, he was very big in the 1930s. Yeah, I knew that. Hi, Ward. Sorry I missed you there. I'm talking here. Sometimes it's hard for me to look at the scrolling screen and look outward at the same time. So forgive me if I miss comments or people. I try my best here. But Danny Thomas did make an appearance on his daughter Marlo Thomas's show, playing a priest. Yes. In fact, it was a cute little cameo. I'm trying to remember it. I think it was at a water fountain or something. And she passes him. He's a priest. And she goes, "Oh, excuse me, Father." And he turns and says, "Bless you, my child." It was cute. It was something like that. I'm paraphrasing it. But it was the very last season of that girl that Danny Thomas did a full-fledged guest star role on the show. It was like one of the last episodes he ever did. And I always thought it was a shame they didn't work more together. And I'm certain he would never have been considered for the role of her father. He was too much of a star in his own right. And also, when Marlo Thomas was starring that show, she was very much making a name for herself. So I think she wanted to separate herself from her image with her father. But yeah, Marlo was just incredible. I was listening to some of the audio commentary on the DVD set for that show. And she said that it was shortly after the first episode, her father finally contacted her, and he just said, I caught you on TV, and I want you to know I thought you were absolutely luminous. What a sweet thing. She had a great relationship with her father, Danny. But they had, was it Lou Ayres? I think that was the name of the man who played her father. I'm trying to think of his name. I'm blanking on it, but he played father on that girl. And Marlo Thomas was once talking about that in an interview. He never had children in real life. And the two of them became quite close making the show. And Marlo Thomas even visited him in the hospital when he was sick and dying. And he said, "You're the daughter I never had." And you just see that on the show. You see that chemistry that feels very honest between the two of them. They do seem like a father and daughter. And that part on the show where Anne Marie and her father would go out on father-daughter dates together from time to time, that was based on real life. Danny Thomas and Marlo Thomas used to do that. Very same thing. So she wanted to incorporate that into the show. And I told this in one of my videos that, Marlo Thomas was fiercely determined to never marry. She was quite the feminist, very independent. And she just felt that she could never be, sorry, Sasha wants to join again. She never wanted to be caged in a marriage. That's the way she saw it, a cage. But then, as we know, she appeared one day on the Phil Donahue show in the late 70s. And it's true. They've acknowledged it. That's how they literally met. She was the guest star on his show. And they acknowledged they fell in love on the air in front of millions of people watching. Marlo said herself, she said, we were flirting shamefully and outrageously with each other. And I look back now and I cringe because it was so unprofessional of us. But the world got to watch them fall in love. And 3 years later, they married. And this was, Marlo was like 42 at the time. And she was so terrified. And she told the story. They were getting married at our parents' house from their mansion in Beverly Hills. And she was up in her old bedroom and she was sitting there at the vanity table, all, dressed and made up and everything. And all the guests were downstairs. Phil was literally standing there at the altar and she was paralyzed in place. She couldn't get up. She was so full of fear. What am I doing? What am I doing? And Danny Thomas knocked on the door and said, can I come in? Can we talk? And he said, honey, you don't want to do this. You don't have to. We can just tell all the guests to leave right now. You don't have to. And then something that startled said, no, let's do it, Daddy. Let's do it. And so he took her by the arm and, of course, escorted her down the aisle of their living room. And Marlo said she saw Phil standing there. And she said, what am I afraid of? It's just Phil. And they were together. They were married for, 44 years until Phil died last year. Anyway, let's see. Let me check other comments here. Or true. Rosemary DeCamp played Miss Thomas's mother. It's funny seeing these very blonde folks being the parents of the somewhat exotic daughter. Yes, who was half Italian and half Lebanese. But yeah, and Rosemary DeCamp. I don't know if you know this little story about her. Did you ever see the movie The Aviator about Howard Hughes? It was directed by Martin Scorsese. Leonardo DiCaprio played Howard Hughes, and Cate Blanchett won a supporting actress Oscar for playing Katharine Hepburn, the young Katharine Hepburn who was dating him at the time. Anyway, there's a scene, Howard Hughes was an aviator. He was always testing on his planes. And there's this scene where his plane gets out of control. It's all true. He was flying over Beverly Hills. And his plane, the wing just sliced right through one of the houses. And they show the inside of the house and the plane wing just cutting right through. Anyway, that was Rosemary DeCamp. That was her. That was her home that got obliterated by Howard Hughes's plane. So it's another little piece of trivia there. No word. I knew that Burt Reynolds and Dinah Shore, of course, were an item, but I didn't realize it was on her talk show. But that makes sense. I know he was on her show a number of times, and they flirted, but that was, of course, after they were a couple. And they were very, very blatant about the fact they were a couple. What was that? Hey, Chris, thanks for joining. I thought Emery was a cute name, but that being the last name for their family, is Lou Marie was miswritten. I don't know. I don't know how they came about that name. I know, Marlo Thomas wrote an autobiography, and I read it, and I was really interested in what she had to say, and she held back. It's a very unrevealing autobiography. I think it was one of those cases where she felt duty-bound, obligated to write an autobiography, but didn't really want to do it. And she certainly didn't want to spill her private life. So she didn't go into details like that. And that's the sort of stuff that I love. That's what I love to read. Let's see. Oh, and Marie Ward, you thought because her last name was Marie and she's seen waving the U.S. flag in the opening credits, you thought she was French as a small child. That would make sense. That's a logical conclusion to come to. Yeah. Oh, Ward, did you read that autobiography also? Do you know what I mean? How it was very unrevealing. And she also shared the autobiography with other comedians to have them tell their stories. But if you were to take the actual chapters comprising Marlo Thomas's life, it'd be like a pamphlet. I think it wouldn't be that much. I know that like Barbara Streisand, for example, she was quite clear on the fact she did not want to write an autobiography. She had dreaded writing an autobiography. She had put it off and put it off, and she had offers on the table, like multi-million-dollar offers from publishers going back more than 40 years. But she just didn't want to reveal her private life. And she also said that she's not the type of person who likes reliving the past. She doesn't like to look backwards, which, of course, unfortunately, an autobiography, that's the whole point of it. You have no choice. So she spent a decade writing that book, and it was because of the pandemic lockdown she finally finished it, because there wasn't anything else she could do. So she finally just buckled down and got it completed, and it's a wonderful book. But my sister was making the comment. She said it's oddly, there's a distance in it. Like Barbara didn't really put her whole heart into it. It's like, she was comparing it because she had just listened to the audiobook for Cher's autobiography. It just came out a few months ago. And she said, when you listen to Cher, it was like you were just listening to an old friend and you were just having some laughs together. She said, when she listened to Barbara's book, it was like a college class, and Barbara was the professor teaching the course. And I thought about that, and I thought, yeah, there is distance in her book. She was limited, even though the book is over 1,000 pages. It's the audiobook is 48 hours, making it one of the longest ever. So she had plenty to say, but yet when it came to her personal life, you could just feel that wall there. Like, no, I'm not going to talk about that. That's none of your business, which is, of course, her prerogative. Yeah, that's just thought of that. What's the word? I think Miss Streisand's autobiography is best for scholars and would be valued more once she's no longer in the world. Yeah. Well, like Barbara, she's a filmmaker. She's a director. That is her first and foremost passion, not singing. It's filmmaking. And it's been pointed out that her autobiography is it's more of a book about making movies, going and behind the scenes, the perspective of a director, a woman rewriting the script, working with her actors. That's where she seemed to come to life more. Let's see. Oh yeah, the first part of her autobiography probably was the best. I tell you, I thought the biggest revelation in that book was when she admitted to shoplifting as a teenager. I thought, Barbara, you shoplifted? And she went into detail about how she would have a skirt on and she'd be looking at shorts and she'd put the shorts on underneath the skirt and then walk out the store. That was one of the few revelations because, I have read several biographies of Barbara, and she always insisted that biographers had never told her story correctly. But as I read her biography, I thought most of the biographers were pretty on target, pretty close. That's why there were no surprise revelations. And yes, my little Siamese here, she can't decide if she wants to be on the camera in the spotlight or what. So I'll just leave her here for the moment. Let's see. Well, and you're asking we could talk about Burgess Meredith. Honestly, I don't know anything about Burgess Meredith. I don't know what. Maybe you can suggest something to talk about him, but I'm not. I mean, I know of him, of course, and of course, I think he was married to Paulette Goddard, if I'm not mistaken, and of course, he was marvelous in Rocky. Just marvelous. He got an Oscar nomination for that. But I don't really have a lot of expertise on him. Dolly Parton admitted to smacking. Oh, what was this? Dolly Parton admitted to snacking and shopping in grocery stores. Oh, I think a lot of us have been guilty of that one. Well, I don't know. I mean, I know of like grocery stores that give out samples, like Trader Joe's, they do that. And I've gone back for third and fourths and things, but I don't know. Maybe Dolly, was she actually opening up things, reaching in bags? No, that's a little different. That is shoplifting. Or when you're going by the salad bar, or something, help yourself to one or two little things. But, I'm sure it's long forgiven with Dolly. And, and I look at Dolly, all of the incredible philanthropy she has done. I mean, millions and millions and millions of dollars she has given. She's more than made up for any of her sins, snacking and shopping in the grocery store. Oh, yeah, Andy, I know he played the Penguin in Batman also. Yeah. Yeah, he's married to Paulette Goddard. Of course, she was, of course, married to Charlie Chaplin. So how's that for degrees of separation? What was it? I love the pillow or blanket behind you. It makes me think of Cat in the Hat. Oh, that's just an crocheted Afghan that my grandmother made that many, many years ago. For a long time, I didn't use it because I wanted to preserve it. And then I thought, well, what's the point of that? My grandmother made it for me to use and enjoy. And she crafted it well. It's held up all these years. Even with my cat, even with Sasha, it's held up. Oh yeah, the war, but Dolly fessed up to it. But she, like I said, she more than made up for it. That's like Carol Burnett and her grandmother when they were poor, growing up in Hollywood. Carol, she was growing up in Hollywood and her grandmother was taking care of her, and they used to go to the Thrifties. Thrifty was a drugstore, pharmacy, soda fountain type thing on Sunset and Fairfax here in LA. And, the story, it's well known. And Carol laughs and she talks about how they go to the counter and they take the silverware, they take the napkins, they take the ketchup, the salt and pepper, any other condiments that are available. And then they go in the ladies' room. Grandma would bring a big purse, and they'd go to each of the stalls and take the toilet paper. And Carol was telling that story on Larry King, and she said, oh, God, I'm going to have to write a check to Thrifty now. But she's more than made up for it with her philanthropy also. Oh, yeah, I know that, Andy. She used to tug at her ear. It was a signal to say goodnight to her grandmother, because her grandmother was always insistent. Carol was in New York doing the Gary Moore show, and her grandmother was back and called her Nanny. Was back here in LA, and they'd watch, and she said, now you be sure to say goodnight to me. And she was like, Nanny, I can't do that. Well, think of something. So she came up with the ear tug, and then later Carol did that on her other shows to say goodnight to her daughters, her 3 daughters. And I think once she was interviewed, somebody measured her earlobes, and sure enough, the earlobe that she tugged was like a little millimeter longer than the other. Um, what was this here? More they were friends, and he's a gag man and comedy director. You see his fingerprints all over I Love Lucy. Oh yeah, you're talking about Buster Keaton. We've talked about Buster Keaton before on here. Lucy and Buster were extremely close. Well, it all began. Lucy used to love watching silent movies as a little girl. Her grandfather used to take her to the local theater in Jamestown. Well, there's one in Celeron and one in Jamestown. And she loved Chaplin. She loved Harry Langdon, Harold Lloyd, but Buster Keaton, she really, really appreciated and identified with. And it was during the 1940s when they were both at MGM. I'm sorry, my cat's running around here. It was during the 1940s at MGM, and it was a period where both of their careers were on the skids. Lucy had come to MGM in 1942, and they were going to give her the big star build-up. That's where they made her a redhead. They wanted to reinvent her, give her a new image, and they started her out in starring roles in musicals, and it just didn't quite click with the public. And they started demoting her to smaller parts, and by the late 40s, it's like they just didn't know what to do with her, which is often the case when you've got a very rare, unique talent like Lucille Ball. You don't fit into a mold. You don't fit into average roles. People for a long time don't know what to do with you. And Buster Keaton, in 1925, he had been the number one movie star in the world, the number one box office draw. He was huge. But by the time sound had come in, the late 20s, early 30s, and another thing that happened, he had signed with MGM, and Buster Keaton had always had creative control in his movies. Suddenly, MGM wanted to take all that away from him and tell him how to be Buster Keaton, and it was just disastrous. And his movies got worse and worse, and his box office appeal just plummeted. He was going through a very bad divorce, custody battle, children, and he began drinking very heavily. By 1940, he was a mess. And by the late 40s, he was working as a $300 a week gag writer for MGM. So Lucy and Buster Keaton were both at low points and not really knowing what to do with their careers, their lives. And they bonded. They became very close. Buster was a very smart man, and he knew great talent when he saw it. He saw in Lucy a comedic genius. He was one of the first to really recognize that. And he took Lucy under his wing and started teaching her every single thing he knew about comedy. And he even played a role in helping Lucy and Desi put together a stage tour act, a vaudeville act they did in 1950. This was to convince the country that the all-American redhead and the Cuban band leader could be accepted as a husband and wife, because that was an obstacle to doing I Love Lucy. CBS said, nobody is going to accept you two as a married couple. No way. No way. With his thick Cuban accent and everything. No, they wanted her to have like the all-American blonde, blue-eyed husband. And Lucy said, no, Desi, no show. Because the whole point of the show was they wanted to work together so they could live together in the same city, rather than Desi touring the country with his band and Lucy and here in LA making movies. They wanted to be in one place. They wanted to start having children. They wanted to save their marriage. And they thought doing a show, anything, would be perfect together. So they did a vaudeville act, toured the country. Buster Keaton had a big part in creating a lot of the routines. He tutored Lucy and Desi, worked with them with props. He taught Lucy a lot about prop use, physical comedy, and we know what happened. The public loved them, and that convinced CBS to let them make the pilot for I Love Lucy. And I think we all know what happened from there. It's so funny. They had no idea that show was going to become this American institution that was going to be playing close to 75 years later and be playing in 78 different countries to over 3 billion people. They had no idea. They were just doing this to save their marriage. And they thought, okay, it'll last about a year, and then we'll have the films. We can show those to the kids as home movies. We all benefit from those home movies now very, very well. Let me see, where's some other comments here. Yeah, Ward, you're right. You do see his fingerprints all over I Love Lucy. I certainly recognize it because I'm so versed in Buster Keaton and, of course, Lucy, and I can just see when she's going into little bits, little mannerisms. And I mentioned on here they only really worked together one time, and it was in 1965. It was a special tribute to Stan Laurel. Dick Van Dyke hosted on CBS, and Lucy and Buster Keaton did a 5-minute silent movie routine, and it's just adorable, and it's on YouTube. Highly recommended to watch two comedic giants working together. Very exciting. And have I ever paid respects or visited any celebrity headstones? Oh my God, yes. I have so many videos where I've done just that. I've gone to different graves, paid respects. I have several at Judy Garland's grave, for example. There were some places I tried, like Elizabeth Taylor, Gable and Lombard's grave, Jean Harlow, but they're inside a mausoleum, and they're very strict about no photography. I tried to sneak some video, and the security guards came out very quickly and stopped me. But yes, I've done that. We have so many celebrity graves here. I did several videos at George Burns and Gracie Allen's final resting place. They're inside a mausoleum, but for some reason they don't have the restrictions there. And it's very poignant for me because the bench is still there. George used to go to visit Gracie's grave once a month. He would sit on this bench and just talk about life. Like, this is what our son is doing, our daughter's doing now, the grandchildren are okay. He would just fill her on everything. And then there was one time he came there, hey, Gracie, I won an Oscar. He just won the Academy Award for Sunshine Boys. They told her about that. And he always knew that he was going to be interred there beside her. And in this interview I saw, it filmed with him sitting on that bench, he said, our grave is going to say Allen and Burns. I had top billing in life, but Gracie is going to have top billing for eternity. And it does say on their grave, together again. It's very sweet. I find it very moving to go there. And I once did some videos there where I told different Burns and Allen stories with their tombstone behind me. Oh yeah, I knew that about Harold Lloyd injuring his hand. It's my understanding he lost a thumb, and yeah, he had to have these custom gloves made, with a prosthetic thumb so he could camouflage that. Buster Keaton did a lot of his own stunts and seriously injured himself several times. There was one movie, I forget which silent it was, but he took a really hard fall. It looks funny on camera, but it had to have been just extraordinarily dangerous. And it was like 40 years later, he was getting a physical examination, and the doctor was looking at his x-rays. Mr. Keaton, when did you break your neck? And he said, not that I was ever aware of. It shows right here, your neck was seriously broken at one time. And Buster realized it was when he did that stunt in that movie. And of course, Harold Lloyd losing a thumb. And I'm trying to think of other stories like that. But Many of those silent comedians were very insistent on doing all their own stunt work. Lucy did a lot of her own stunt work on I Love Lucy, and some of the things she did were dangerous. Like the episode where she missed the ship to Europe and she had to get a helicopter to lower her down on a rope. Well, no, obviously she was not really dangling from a helicopter, but what made that so dangerous, if you've been on sound stages, the ceilings are very, very high. And, the catwalk and everything and the lights up ahead. And Lucy was harnessed in with tied to a rope, and she had to be lowered something like 40 feet down. They had to film her coming down, and there was no way you could get a stunt person to do that because she was going to be in camera. So, and Lucy had a massive fear of heights, but she just sucked it up and did it anyway. Anything for comedy, she did it, and she gets lowered down. But it was a very, very dangerous stunt. Now there's so much controversy about the grape vats. Lucy was a big storyteller, and she tended to embellish. And she claimed in latter years that she nearly died in front of a studio audience. She was nearly killed when the overzealous Italian actress dunked her head under the grape juice, and Lucy claimed she almost drowned. And that's pretty much been proven not to be true. For one thing, there are surviving color photographs that were taken on the set where the camera is actually looking down into the grape vat, and you can see those grapes were maybe about that thick, maybe about 2 inches at the most. There was no possible way a person could have drowned. It's just no possible way. And there was also the legend that the actress she was playing opposite was Italian and could not understand English. So when people were yelling out, stop, no, I'm drowning, she couldn't understand the English. Well, that wasn't true at all. She spoke fluent English. But for years, I've seen that in biographies, that claim she couldn't understand the directions because she only spoke Italian. That was not true at all. And also a personal story I have from Lucy's hairdresser, Irma Cusley, wonderful woman, lived almost to be 100, and she had the best stories, and she was very gracious. Irma Cusley is the one who made Lucy a redhead back in 1942, and that's a story there. I told that where Lucy's hair turned green the first time. Turned green, and it took almost 5 hours to make her a redhead. And Irma said Lucy was crying hysterically, like, he's getting out of here, getting out of here, and then said, we can't let you go. We can't let you go with your hair like that. And they finally got her hair red. And Irma did her hair off and on during the I Love Lucy years. And of course the wigs, when I say she did Lucy's hair from the 60s on, it was Lucy's wigs she used to do. But Lucy also would have her real hair done by Irma as well, but Lucy wore wigs on the show. And anyway, Irma was telling me that wasn't true about Lucy drowning in the grape juice. She said, if anything like that, because she was on the set while they were filming, and she said Lucy was so valuable. She was the show. She was everything. There was a whole crew of people there ensuring her safety, that nothing was going to happen to that woman. They were all going to be without a job if anything happened to Lucy. So she said, no, she was never in that kind of danger. But what concerned her, something that was not in the script, Lucy was not supposed to be actually dunked in the grape juice, her hair. Irma said if she had known that was going to happen, she would have put a wig on Lucy to protect her real hair. Lucy's hair, because it was dyed red, it was a combination of, her hair was bleached, and then henna was put on top of that. But the bleach made her hair very porous, very absorbent. So Irma was watching that, horrified, fearing for the worst that Lucy's hair was going to be dyed purple and she was never going to be able to get that out of her hair. It's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So, but she stood there while they were filming the scene, and it happened, and it was hysterical, and it got the laughs. And of course, it's classic to this day. But as soon as they were done with that episode, Irma took Lucy by the hand, grabbed her, said, come on, let's go to your dressing room, put Lucy's head under the sink, and started washing her hair quickly and just prayed for the best. And the grape juice did come out. So anyway, any other comments here? Wait. This moved on me. Let me find my place. Oh yeah. You said, Ward, tell about visiting Judy Garland's grave and George Burns and Gracie's grave. Yeah, I just did. Let's see. Sherlock Jr. And I'm not sure the movie where Buster broke his neck. I'm not sure. I think it might have been one of his short subjects, not one of his features. Yeah, the Navigator. Oh my God, Steamboat Bill, The Navigator. These are all wonderful, wonderful movies. Or how about the shower scene with Vivian Vance on the Lucy Show? Oh yeah, that's another time Lucy claimed that she nearly drowned. And there have been quite a few who say that's a bit of an exaggeration. But if you know that episode, it's probably one of the best episodes of the Lucy Show. And it's up there with anything that Lucy and Vivian Vance did on I Love Lucy. It's of that caliber. That when they're installing a shower stall, installing a shower stall, and the drain gets clogged, and then the water starts rising and rising, and they're both like clinging to the top of the shower. Their head's barely above the water, and they've got to unclog the drain, and Lucy has to go down underwater to try to loosen the drain. And anyway, she claimed that she started swallowing water, and Vivian pulled her up by the hair and saved her life. And Lucy said, she was gagging and choking on water. She couldn't say her lines. And she said, this is where she really respected Vivian Vance. Loved working with Vivian Vance because she could really trust her in moments like this. Because Lucy hated stopping scenes. She was very budget conscious, for one thing. And she also hated losing momentum. She hated retakes. So anything to save a scene while it's filming. And she said that Vivian Vance took her dialogue and combined it with her dialogue and just said some of Lucy's dialogue in the form of questions so she could answer them until Lucy could breathe again and talk. And Vivian just did it skillfully and stayed completely in character, and they got it all on film. Let's see. Oh, what about when she was on the ledge with Superman? I have seen a still photo of that. That ledge was about 2 feet off the ground. Literally, it was like 2 feet off. That was just camera work to make it look like they were up on a high ledge. Yeah, a person panicking can drown in a cup of water. That's true. But no, it's likely Lucy wasn't really drowning, because it's like what Irma Cusley told me. There were too many people standing around to protect her, to keep her safe. Anything went wrong. Even the slightest, they would have stopped the cameras and been there to save her. In fact, there was even a joke once Desi Arnaz had. There were all these cables on the floor, and Lucy tripped and almost fell forward. And Desi caught her, and Desi was upset somebody had left cables out. And he said, "Hey, fellas, anything happens to her, we're all in the shrimp business." Let's see here. I watched the video. Burns would kiss her name, and I'll see you soon. Or I don't know what. Are you referring to George Burns and Gracie Allen there? Burns would kiss her name and said, "I'll see you soon." Oh, that might have been that interview. I can't remember, honestly. Oh, yeah, the loaf of bread out of the oven. That's another one. Now, that one, I don't think there was any real danger there, other than, the part where Vivian Vance has the big saw and she's sawing the bread. And Lucy is going, watch my legs, watch my legs. I've always thought that was for real. Like Lucy was genuinely concerned. Hey, be careful with that blade. Be careful with that blade. Watch my legs. Watch my legs. And that was a real loaf of bread. In fact, there were 2 loaves of bread. They could not find anyone willing to bake that bread for them because bakers said the sheer weight of it would destroy their oven, because a loaf of bread like that would weigh close to a ton and no bread oven could support it. But Desi finally found someone who could do it. And Desi said, we better get 2 loaves made in case we need a backup. That's a common thing on film sets, to have 2 of things, if anything goes wrong. Just like Lucy with her wigs. Irma Cusley told me she would sometimes have 3 or 4 wigs on stands. And like if Lucy got disheveled or sweaty or she got wet or something, then they had to go do another scene. She'd just pull the wig off, put another wig on her, and they'd go on. Let's see. But yeah, they had 2 loaves of bread, and the baker said we should make it rye bread because rye bread will stay fresher longer. So anyway, that's the story there. Oh yeah, there's some camera work when Lucy and Viv were on the Empire State Building ledge. I have a feeling that was the same thing where they were probably like 3 feet down. They were not really in danger, but it's still fun because Lucy and Vivian were so invested in their performances and their characters. They make you believe that they are actually walking on the ledge of the Empire State Building, yes, in their Martian garb. I love the show. Those are episodes you can watch those things 150 times. You know it's coming, but you just get so caught in the spirit and the enthusiasm of it because Lucy said herself, that was her great secret to playing the Lucy character. She said, I was a child believer. I just believed everything like a little girl would believe. No matter how absurd the situation in the script, I believed it with all my heart. And sure enough, she made us believe too. Well, I mean, it wasn't that big of a deal loading the bread, Andy. I'm sure they just cut out the back of the stove. Got to remember, those are sets. That wasn't really a wall. That was a set. So they could easily just cut a hole in that and have a hole in the oven. And I'm sure just push the bread through. It's probably no big feat there. Oh yeah, Ward, you just said basically what I said there. Well, yeah, think of the sandwiches the crew would get to eat later. That's actually true because they had all that bread left over after the show. They invited the studio audience to come down. They had big pots of jam and butter, and they cut off the pieces of the bread, and they sent everybody home with a big piece of bread. And there's also the time when the one where Lucy was working in the pizza parlor. And Lucy actually, she was such a perfectionist. She rehearsed and rehearsed and rehearsed until it was absolutely authoritative coming from her. She went to an Italian restaurant for a week. After rehearsing I Love Lucy, she would spend nights in an Italian restaurant working with the chefs to learn how to flip pizza dough, make pizza. And by the end of the week, she was better than anybody in that restaurant. And you watch that episode, the way she's flipping the dough. Well, anyway, after the show, they invited the studio audience to come down and stay, and Lucy made pizza for everyone in the audience. What's this here? Ward, great talking with you, but I got a very early clock in tomorrow, so I got to go. Oh, Ward, well, thank you for joining. I really appreciate it a lot. Thank you. Oh yeah, the movie scene with Lucy and Harpo, of course, was based on, I think it was Duck Feathers, which was in 1931, and it was Groucho and Harpo. And many years later, Lucy and Harpo remade that. And the story was that Harpo did not remember his own routine. He didn't, and Lucy had to teach him how to do it. She had to teach Harpo his own routine because it had been so long. But wow, it's magical. It's magical. And you can watch that episode over and over and over. It's flawless. I mean, it was never, it was always meant to be just watched on a little black and white TV in the 50s, originally aired like one time and then reruns. They weren't taking into account. Now we can watch these episodes on our iPads and our phones, and we can take our little finger and we can scrub and we can slow the action down, speed it up and freeze it. And I will confess, I've done that. I have analyzed that scene with Lucy and Harpo in the mirror, and still it blows me away how technically proficient it is. And not just technically, they put their hearts and souls into it. Like, I was watching Lucy when she's the mirror reflection. It's like she's really behind glass. It's like, I'm going to describe it. It's like a mirror reflection. It's like just a fraction of a bit slower than real light. And she incorporated all that, where she molecularly became a reflection in the mirror, and she believed it, and she made us believe it, and she made Harpo believe it, in character. So they just kept playing off of that, and it built and built, and it's such a joy to watch. And there was such a purity to what Lucy and Harpo did. Just a childlike purity and simplicity, which I think makes it extra joyous. You have a Harpo question. Does anybody know the reason why he could never speak? Oh, no, he could speak. He could speak. That wasn't a problem. I read something about he had a thick accent. Well, no, okay, that is true. He had a thick New York accent. That's true. But then so did his brothers. Well, never mind. Chico did that faux Italian. Groucho just kind of did a play on it. But no, Harpo had a thick New York accent. But the reason he didn't speak was that was just his character. When they were creating their stage personas. Originally the Marx Brothers did vaudeville, and then they did Broadway. Chico adopted that Italian card playing piano player Groucho. We know what Groucho was. The glasses, the mustache, and it's like, oh, and Harpo decided to make his character mute, and as we know, it worked beautifully. Just worked beautifully. Oh, hi, Goddess Val. Thank you for joining. Thank you. How is it in Florida? Yeah. We've got riots here in LA. We're gonna see what's gonna happen. Is Harpo's son still living? I don't know. On iBooks, where you can download books, of course. Harpo Marx's autobiography is on there, and it's only $4.99. I just downloaded a sample, the first chapter, and I have to say it was quite engaging. I enjoyed it. And interesting, it's a long autobiography. There were even jokes about, well, he never spoke in life, but he sure had plenty to say when it came time to write his book. It's a reminder. I should download that book. I think I would enjoy it. No, I don't know if Harpo. I think Harpo did his own stunts, his own routines, because his whole thing was about his physicality. That, and plus I can't recall Harpo ever doing anything really dangerous, not in the way like Buster Keaton and Harold Lloyd, the type of things they did. There were a few times it's a miracle they were even alive by the end of the film, some of the stunts they did. No, some of the things Harold Lloyd did, like, it was one of his most famous is called Safety Last, and that's the one where he's climbing up a skyscraper. But that was a lot of camera tricks. Again, it's very similar to what I said about Lucy and the Superman, the ledge, they were 2 feet off the floor. It was kind of like that. They had all these platforms built around the skyscraper out of camera range. So he was never in danger of plummeting to his death. But boy, it sure looked like it while they were doing it. Let's see, where's some other comments here. Guys, I grew up in West Palm Beach and we never had AC until 1978 and central AC in 1980 in my mother's home. Well, that was like my home. My parents never had. Wait, I just got to answer something here real quick. I'm in the middle of doing my live stream. I'll talk to you later. Sorry. Warts and all. I was told when you do YouTube shows like this, just be yourself, mistakes, everything. Had to answer a message there. But yeah, I was saying my parents were like that also. We, growing up in southwestern Virginia, it's very, very humid, very muggy there. And my parents, for whatever reason, did not have air conditioning at all. So I remember growing up in that house, all we had were fans blowing, and I'd be just sweating and sweating and sweating. I think that's why I have a lifelong hatred of heat and humidity. And it was only after I left for college and then went out on my own that they finally got central air conditioning. I was like, Mom, Dad, why did you wait all these years? I don't know. It just seemed like a good idea. It does make a difference. What's that? It works on Kitty jump scare. Yeah. Did she jump? Sasha is... Oh, she's been licking herself. She's wet. Sasha. Okay. She doesn't want on camera right now. You're indecisive, Sasha. You can see when she's twisting around like this. Oh, come on. Be a good girl. Be a good girl, Sasha. There we go. Say hi to everyone. She's a little hellraiser. She's an Aries female. And she brings that energy into my home. I've had Sasha since she was 10 weeks old, and she's now 10 years old, and she is telling me she wants down. So much for that. Let's see. Does anybody else have another question or comment before I sign off for the evening? Anything? I've got a friend who's trying to reach me right now. If nobody has any other comments, I may call it a day for now. I'm not sure if Whimsy and I are going to be doing our show tomorrow or not. It all depends on how her travel goes to Mexico tomorrow. And we might even end up doing it late tomorrow night. I don't know. So I'm just going to be on standby there. But that, of course, is a show where we talk about a lot of political things, current events. She's also my very dear friend going back for a number of years. We used to work together, and we just have the best time. We're like just two old friends. We get on camera together on split screen. She's in Portland, and I'm here in LA, and it works quite well. Let me check some other comments here. Did you know Richard Fisk served in World War II? He was in many Stooge shorts. I'm not really familiar with him. I didn't know that. So sorry. I'm not really an aficionado on the Three Stooges. I'm sorry. I don't know more about them. There are a few little stories here and there. But anyway, Whimsy and I hopefully are going to do our show tomorrow. There'll certainly be plenty to talk about. And me, I'm just working on my art projects right now, writing projects, staying very, very busy. I thank you all for joining me. It really means a lot to me, your loyalty, and I thank you. This is the only contribution I've been making to my channel for quite a few months now, because I just haven't had time for the videos, but I do have quite an archive on there. I think close to 700, if anybody is wanting to ever see some of my stories about old Hollywood and I Love Lucy and so forth. And I'll get back into it one day, but this live stream serves as a placeholder. just let you know I'm still here. I haven't deserted you, and keep contributing to the channel. So good night, everybody. Thank you for joining me, and I will be back here again next Monday, same time, same place. I appreciate you very much. Bye.